What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Daily GrindCast. Today I have an amazing guest for you guys. He's a great friend of mine. He's a college professor at Michigan State. He's an author and a writer of critical race English education. And he's also has his doctorate in literacy. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Dr. Lamar Johnson.
Let's go.
Thanks for finally making the effort to show up.
It took a moment, you know. It was I was afraid.
He was supposed to be our second guest. Now
he said yes the first month. We're on episode 22. Okay.
I was afraid because usually when I do a podcast, it's about my identity as a professor.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this was going to push me out of my comfort zone in a way that I've never been pushed when I do a podcast. So I had to get my mind right. So I think this is the perfect time now. Particularly when this comes out, as I begin to transition my careers and make a career pivot.
Yeah.
I think this is the perfect time to do this podcast.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I'm excited to hear whatever the version of your story. I mean, I've read a little bit about your book, and I've read into it, and we've had amazing conversations, but I've never heard your versioning of it. So it's always great to hear that story. So we love to hear that part, how everyone grew up, how, any struggles you went through, pivotal moments in your life that possibly made you turn past or made you change the way you were thinking. All those things are what young men need to hear so that they can pivot to the right areas, or they can make the right changes in life. Because if you don't have those moments, then you're constantly, I feel like, making maybe all the wrong choices, or you don't have any idea of where you're going. Let's start with where you grew up and how you kind of grew up out of your younger years. Move through that story for us.
So I grew up in a small town called Edgefield, South Carolina. It's a very rural town, about 4,500 people. Yes. So everyone knows everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's a small town, but although it's a small town, we have a lot of hometown heroes too. People who play NFL, people who are lawyers and doctors and teachers doing great things. Mm-hmm. So although it's a small town, I've always believed that I can be something bigger than this. And not to say that in a negative way, but I knew that I had life outside of, Edgefield. Yeah. So I always wanted something different. So I've always been a dreamer. And I believe in the possibility that anything I want, I can create. And so partially because my parents had me at a young age. They were 17, so they were teenage parents. And when I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, you heard these stories about, okay, if your parents had you at 17, then you will be, a teenage parent, right? If you had parents who have been incarcerated, then you will be incarcerated. And so I've always heard those stereotypes, and I tried my very best to defy those stereotypes and to push back against those stereotypes. Because I knew that necessarily wasn't the case. My mom was very hands-on with me. She did not let me do what I wanted to do. Although I wanted to, she did not play that. But also I had a stepdad who's also, who I call dad, who's like my dad. So since I was 2 months old, I had another male figure in the house. Although that my biological dad wasn't as present as I wanted him to be, I still had a 2-parent household. So what I heard people saying in the news and stuff this is not my story. And so I've always been a lover of reading and writing. I can remember when I wanted to be a teacher, I was a first grader, knowing that, I want to be a teacher. This would be cool to teach, right? Because I always saw, women being teachers. And then I had my very first male teacher, Mr. Dupree, when I was in the first grade. And I said, I think this is what I want to do, which is why I believe, in the book I talk about, teaching is also soul work. It comes from the soul. And so I've always known that I wanted to be a writer as well. So I was in the 3rd grade one day, and I was getting ready to go to the mall with my parents. And I had my journal with me. And I remember thinking I would love to go to Hollywood and to be an actor. But I thought I could not do that because you had to know somebody in Hollywood to make it as an actor. And I'm only in the 3rd grade. So it's probably 1995, 1996. And so now, fast forward all these years, I know that that's not true, right? You can still come here to LA. It's a different type of space you have to maneuver if you don't know anybody, right? To put yourself out there. But I know that it's possible for me to, write, right? I want to write. So I know it's possible for me to do that. So the reason why I'm here today is because of my family. They've always believed in me. They've always pushed me. And I come from a working class middle family. So I didn't grow up with, we didn't have a lot of money, but we still traveled, right? We traveled, we took vacations. I still got a car when I got my license. No, it wasn't my Honda Accord, a Nissan Maxima I wanted, but I still, had a car to drive. I had to get a job in high school. So I had a lot of responsibility, which is why I am who I am today, because of my family. And so even my grandma telling me hey, I think I can see you on TV one day. I'm just really? She's like, yeah, I can see you on TV. I can see you acting. I can see you writing. You're very funny. And I do think I'm quite funny.
Yeah.
And so I think my family is the reason why I'm sitting before you today, right? Because they have pushed me and they always believe in me. And so even when I'm having a moment or down, I know I can call them. I don't even have to tell them what I'm going through, but they just can read my energy through FaceTime. And so like, are you okay? Or if it's something about work, don't let work get to you. You know how to read and write. Why are you upset about writing? Like, you know how to write. You know how to read. It's what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And so I would say my family has played a very big role in my life. I know you all read, I don't know if you read the love letter that I wrote to my dad. And so although I grew up with a 2-parent household, I still wanted that relationship with my dad that I never had until like years later, right before he before he passed away. And so, but for the longest, I had this, like a strong dislike for him because he missed like my high school graduation, certain birthdays, just very pivotal moments. I felt like he should have been present for it. He wasn't. And I didn't want anything from him. Like I didn't want money or anything. I just wanted him to be there because my family had me in sense of the monetary part. It's more so like, just be here for me.
Right.
And so when he tried to come back into my life in terms of when I went to college, when I was 18 or 19, I really wasn't having it. I was pushing him away. And like Drake, I was in my feelings. And so I didn't know the art of forgiveness back then. And so he would always call me, regardless if I answered or not, he was called. And he would always end the call with, I love you. And I would say, oh, peace. I wouldn't say, thank you. I wouldn't say, I love you too. Just like, oh, okay. Because I didn't know if I truly loved him, which is sad, right? But also, this is a man who I share the same name, blood. And I'm like, so to have a strong dislike for him is also to have a strong dislike for myself. The older I got, I recognized that. And so it was in 2018, I was on my way, leaving the mall actually, and passing Michigan State. And I was getting ready to go to Miami for my 30th birthday. And he called and I answered the phone and we had a conversation. And when I was passing Michigan State on my left, he said, I love you. And then in that quick moment, I was like, shit, I feel like I have to say it back this time. Like you're about to turn 30. You can't enter your 30s carrying the baggage from years ago. You have to let that past go. And I said, I love you too. And so I said to myself, like, how can you teach predominantly? I teach predominantly white people. And I'm always teaching them about like, the prison industrial complex, like loving on Black kids when you're teaching, understanding that they're working in this system that was not made for them, was built against them actually. So how I'm going to tell you all about loving on Blackness when I can't even tell my own father, like, I love you too. Yeah. So that moment I had to like really let go of the past and work through it and say like, oh no, I love you, and began to build anew in our relationship. Yeah. And so since 2018, we did have a better relationship. We had some ups and downs through that, but it was really good because I think he got to see me on a different level and vice versa. Because so often I would not give him any parts of my life, actually. I would shut him out. And even when he would ask questions, I would just, either pivot or not really respond the way I probably would have to you or somebody else. Right. And so when he passed away, I was okay. Not that he passed away, but okay that we had a chance to rebuild our relationship. Right. Because I think if he would have passed away and I didn't have that, the grieving process would have been totally different. But because we made amends, we apologized, we had real conversations about, life. He told me things my mom didn't tell me. And so I'm just like, oh, I'm meant to be here. I know some people think like, I don't belong here. Like, no, I know that I belong here. From talking to the stories of my dad, like, no, this is meant for me to be here. So I'm very appreciative of the moments that we did have.
I have so much like in common with you. And I always say that with most of my friends. Yeah. That crazy. Somehow it just shows up like out of random moments and stuff like that. Cause like I unfortunately don't know my biological father. I call him sperm donor. Don't care why, but I just call him sperm donor.
I did that too. I was saying stuff like that. And I was like, you can't keep calling this man. I would never tell him to his face, but when other people, that's what I would say. And I was like, but it was also this strong dislike. And I don't want to say hatred because I didn't hate him, but it was a very strong dislike. And because I did not forgive him. And so I'll talk about the art of forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is when you actually can let go. Yeah. You can begin to new. Forgiveness is when you're whole and to be fully human. Yeah. And partial liberation is not full liberation. I wasn't fully liberated if I'm hating on my dad or have a strong dislike for him. And so Oprah Winfrey talks about how forgiveness is actually relinquishing and giving up the past and the desire and hope that something can be different. I can't go back and recreate our relationship from back then. So I have to let it go and move forward and begin to build anew, not only for himself, but also for me.
I like the fact that you said, I can't dislike my dad because you're carrying his last name. So therefore you're disliking yourself. That was key, bro. That's,
Yeah.
and it's facts, you know, like it's crazy because we don't see it that way, right? We're just like, oh, sperm donor, like that dude or that whatever you want to call him. We don't see it that way. And it's tough because obviously you know, like we can relate. My parents got divorced too. I was like 14. And it's been the same, you know, like my dad was never there. He was always working. I was in sports. Coaches will pick me up. Other people will like be the male figures and you know, like in school, sports, even neighbors and stuff like that. My friends' parents, and my dad was never really present. So it's crazy. You know, I never saw it that way until you mentioned it. But how do we get there, bro? Can we forgive? How do we, you know, like it's, because sometimes, like you said, like he'll tell you I love you and then you'll just play it off. And that's what I do sometimes. I'm like, well, when he tells me that, I'm just like, cool. Yeah. Talk to you later. You know, and now I'm just like,
well, I have a strong, I don't know if it's a quote or a saying and stuff like that. And I know I heard it from someone. I think maybe I mentioned it to you on the phone once or twice, that forgiveness is for yourself, not for others.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in a book or something. I know I've heard it before. And the reason forgiveness is for yourself is because if you can't forgive yourself and you can't forgive them, then you carry on that hatred, right? Yeah. Like it's not, regardless of the circumstances, like you have, the forgiveness for you to feel better, you let go, it has to be within you. Yeah. You can't hate them for, oh, well, they never did this. And like, okay, then you have to forgive them for that in your own way.
And I agree with that. The forgiveness is for yourself. And I talked about that in my love letter to my dad because I wrote him a love letter in the book. Yeah. Like, this is me letting go of the past, but also not only forgiving you, but also forgiving me and forgiving myself. Because I'm also not perfect. And when I do something to people, I want them to forgive me. So who am I to sit here and hold you in hostage and not forgive you when I'm not perfect either? Yeah. And so in 2018, I was able to do that because you said, how do you begin to do that? Well, you know, I've always been into church. I've also had a very positive relationship with God. I've always prayed. But for me, it was also the spiritual component too. So like meditating and really bringing those two worlds together, the spiritual world, but also the religious world. So actually learning how to pray again. Because I think that's so important, like really learn like what it means to actually pray. And for as long as I thought prayer was, you know, I have to be on my knees praying to God, like it was always maybe like the Lord's Prayer or some kind of like rehearsed prayer that you've heard before. But like prayer is only just having like an open communication and dialogue with God. Whether you sitting up right now, whether if you're quiet, you could be in a shower, you could go on your knees to pray, right? But I think prayer is all those things. And so for me, it was actually relearning how to pray, having a new connection and relationship with God, but also being honest with myself. And when I know if I also will feel hurt, right? If I'm telling somebody I love you and they do not say it back to me, and here we are, you're about to be 30, and you never call me dad. I never called him dad. Yeah. Right? I never said I love you. So I just but he always stood by me, never questioned it at all. Never said, well, why don't you say I love you back? Why don't you ever call me dad? Yeah, I think he knew, but it's also like I think he had accepted it, but also he's trying to do better to get back. Like let's rebuild again. That's right. And so I think I also have to take it like, you know, my parents had me at 17. I could not imagine having a kid. I know, but I can't imagine having a kid at 17. Like, I cannot imagine when I graduated high school. My mom was 34. Oh, 34. 34. So I just turned 36, and she was 34. So when I graduated college, she was 38. I'm just like, I cannot imagine having two kids, you know, in high school or in college. But she did her thing. She went to work, still works. She looked out for my sister and me, like my stepdad did too, and they still do. And I commend them for that, because I could not imagine doing that. So I can imagine me at 17 with a kid. How much I love to be in the streets? Not anymore. But at one point, I was definitely for the streets and have fun, you know, going partying, traveling the world. And so when you're 17, I can't imagine having that big responsibility. Yeah. So I had to really sit with myself and say, Lamar, you have to get through this. You have to let it go. So also going to therapy, it helped. And I went to therapy in 2018. I began to have a life coach in 2019. But those things help. Just reading. Like I remember reading The Secret. The friend of mine gave me The Secret. Good book. And I read it and it opened my mind in terms of like, you know, alignment, right? Positive affirmations. What you put out to the universe will come back. So if you're having these negative thoughts about your relationship with your dad, it will continue to be that way because you put it out into the atmosphere. So begin to rewire your thinking, you know, deepen your awareness, your consciousness about this. Here I'm teaching kids, or not kids, but college students about how to raise their consciousness around like, you know, gender, race and racism, sexuality, whiteness, all those terms. So I need to like also raise mine too in other ways, which is mindfulness, right? Being mindful, having that faith, believing that something different can be created. You can't see it, but you have to believe it. And I think during those times, it was some of the hardest moments in my life. And so I had to like have that faith, have that deep spiritual connection with myself, but also God. And just to know that everything I needed was at the seat and at the feet of God. That love, that joy, that happiness. Because what I wanted was a love, which was ultimately love for my dad, right? Because I felt like something was missing. Well, I get that love to myself. I probably felt like I was also being rejected or abandoned. So I had to really work with it. It's not just, oh, he wasn't here. It's like, oh, you also feel like you feel rejected. You feel like he abandoned you. And that shit plays out in my relationships with other people, my friends. And I know there have been times I probably I have projected that onto my friends. And that's unfair. But if I didn't do that deep soul work, I probably never figured that out. And so I had to do the deep soul work of figuring out, like, it was the rejection, the abandonment. And so once I got through that, I was able to feel whole again and feel free. Because like earlier, forgiveness is about being free and being whole. And I was not free and I was not whole as long as I was holding on to certain things from the past.
Yeah. I mean, this question keeps coming to my head, and you don't have to answer it or you don't have to really explain on it. But because I feel so close to you on this subject, especially with the dad and stuff, because I don't care about my biological father. I don't ever want to rekindle. I forgave him, and there's no harm to him, nothing. I just know that he's just not a good person, right? All he does is care about himself. But I know that I found my stepdad is like my life. Like, he's my dad. So you're talking to like you felt like maybe abandoned and stuff like that. And this was at a young age. But did you always call your stepdad dad? And did you always have a really good relationship with him? Did he fill the shoes that you needed to, or did he not fill it enough because you still felt maybe abandoned, or that someone didn't want you, or whatever that was, right?
No, he was with my mom since I was 2 months old.
Yeah, so
I grew up thinking he was my dad until I realized, like, oh, you have to go, because on weekends I would go with my grandma on my dad's side, so my dad's mom. I would go with her on the weekends, and my aunts on that side. So after a while, you're getting clear, like, oh, so you have two dads, okay?
You're just like, who's this guy randomly coming in here, telling me, like, picking me up and shit?
Yeah, so even then, my grandma would pick me up. My dad wouldn't pick me up. My grandma would come pick me up. And so I knew that once, because you're in first grade, you don't really understand, like, sets and all. You don't understand all this. So I wasn't like, okay, whatever. Okay, I have two dads. But this man is my dad, my stepdad. When I needed a car in high school, he was there to help with that. When I needed a tire change or oil change, he was doing all that. Yeah. Even now I need stuff. I call him for that. He knows all that stuff. And so, no, I never felt like he abandoned me. He treated me like I was his own, actually. So my sister, that's her dad, but he didn't treat me any different at all. And he has other kids, and they would come sometimes and, live with us for a moment and they'll leave. But I never felt like, oh, he treats me differently. Never. Yeah. Never felt that way. Even now, I don't feel that way. And so I think for me, it was more so about, the older you get, you begin to think, like, I've always been very conscious. I've always been like a smart person in terms of like just going deep and just thinking. I always feel stuff. Even if I don't say anything, I'll always feel it. So it's kind of like, damn. And for the longest, I was the only child. My dad's the only child. I have a brother now, but we're like 15, 16 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just like, damn, you have one kid and you like nothing. Like, you don't, what was it? Why don't you want to be in my life, right? Yeah. Why don't you want to step up and be here for me? It was always about me, right? And I think it's right, but at the same time, he had his own demons he was facing and battling too. And which is why I can forgive him now. But back then, I couldn't see that, right? I couldn't see those things. If, think about the mass incarceration. He grew up, he actually was born in like the Bronx. And so think about like the war on drugs in like the 80s and 90s and being a part of that system. And you're only like, 19, 20, 21 years old. Yep. I can't imagine. But also that system is working against him. Although he has the right to make his own decisions, his own choices, at the same time, he's working within this system. I can forgive him now, but back then it was like, no, you're abandoning me, you're rejecting me. And what have I done to you to make you reject me? Because my grandma, his mom, was always there for me. Christmas, anything I wanted, she would give it to me. I never questioned her love or anybody's love on that side of the family. It's just more so, what's going on. However, when he had my brother, it was different. I saw a different side of him. He was an excellent dad to my brother, actually.
He was playing makeup with his second kid because like I failed in his own eyes. Maybe like I failed my oldest doesn't love me because of my circumstances. I need to do better for the second. And it's also hurtful to see that too, because you're treating them so much better than, or you were with them. And then as a kid, you're just like, okay, why didn't you ever do that for me? But again, different circumstances, different things play out. And it just like, if they don't show that effort that they want to be there and that they're a better person and they're not fucking doing drugs again, they're not doing this, then that's when you see like a turnaround. But if they're still doing the same fuck ups, and then it's like, I guess it would be like more for like the audience or anyone that's listening to this is like, it's more of, you got to pick and choose who you want back in your life. You can't just always be like, you can't just wait and it's like, okay, now they're trying again. Oh, I'm gonna give them another chance, but they keep fucking up. Yeah. So it's really like, you have to, on a conscious level, it's pretty hard to, as even growing up as a kid, to understand like, is this person actually have love for me, or does he only care about themselves and they're only here for themselves? So that's something that, I always thought about, like growing up. I'm just like, because I never really cared for it. Like, let's say, like not having a dad, but I didn't really care for it because it was just like my mom was going through different, she was married 3 times, but she was married to someone, but I knew like a father figure just didn't exist. But she was that father figure. She would, she would tell me what to do. She would, go to work. She would then come back, make sure that we're like doing what we're supposed to, but really not really. She's probably going to see that because she watches the podcast. But it's just like she did her best that she could do, so she was everything to me. And then she married my stepdad when I was like 21. So I'm a whole man already. I already had my son. But ever since day one, we pretty much clicked and we became best friends first. And then after best friends, I really came to love the man within like a couple of years because he's just like, he's amazing to everyone. He has a good heart. He's the best man, that my mom's ever been with. And he treats everyone with respect, stuff like that. So it's like all these qualities that I was trying to be as a man. Yeah. I realized that he was that. So I still learned so much at 21 that I may have not learned. And who knows what would have happened to me because I was still like fucking around doing dumb shit. I wasn't getting my mind right today, like, And
that's what my stepdad, that's what it is though. Like I saw that he's naturally a good person. Like naturally a good person. Like if somebody calls him and my family to come and fit something or do something, just need advice, he gives them advice. He'll help them out. Yeah. People in the community, like he always trying to like give back, like back to school, raise like, money for kids to have notebooks and pencils and pads for school. I'm just helping out. So I see that. So like you're right. I see a qualities of a good man and what a good man's supposed to do, even in the midst of like having like family issues and stuff, right? Because it happens. But he was still a good person. Even with my great aunts and my grandma on my mom's side, like they embrace him. No matter what he's going through with my mom, they still embrace him because they see a good person. And I think that's what it's about, right? Like he's actually a good person. Yeah. And a few years ago, I took some of our mutual friends home to South Carolina. Oh yeah. And they met my family and they said like, oh no, your dad he's fun, he's energetic, but he's a good person. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so important is that he's a good person. And I understand when I meet good people. Yeah. And because of that, I was able to actually embrace them. Because there are some people who have step parents and they don't embrace them, which is very unfortunate for years. And they have like a very tumultuous relationship. But our relationship is nothing like that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm very thankful because it could be totally different.
No, I do actually, more for the audience, because especially on the forgiveness part, right? Because a lot of people, especially nowadays, they tend to, if a friend, a relative, or even the boyfriend or girlfriend, they hurt that person or whoever they hurt, they tend to just get stuck in that moment, in those feelings, right? They don't know how to surpass them. They don't know that they have to forgive or, just be at peace with themselves. What are like maybe like 1 or 2 points that you could tell the audience if they're feeling like stuck and they can't forgive their partner, their parents, or even their friends, right? Because
Well, one I would say is no one is infallible, right? No one is perfect. And if whoever you believe in, I believe in God, and God is such a forgiving God. Yeah. And if God can forgive us, why can't I forgive other people? If you haven't physically harmed me or anything, I should be able to forgive you. Also, having conversations, right? Having critical, healthy, maybe confrontations to really get to the bottom of the forgiveness. For me, before I can get the forgiveness, we have to talk through it. Seriously. Yeah. So I have to process and think through it. And so I think having like healthy conversations is also important. I would say journaling. It sounds simple, but it's so complex just to get it out. Because sometimes when you journal, you think like, oh, damn, it's not really even about them. Mm-hmm. It's about me and how this is, once again, it's attached to maybe what happened to me when I was in the 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. Something so small, but like when you journal, it helps with that. So journaling, even going to therapy. When I go to my therapist, I feel like I can talk shit about my friends. With all due respect. No, you can. Because they help you to see some things, right, that you might not see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so talking to my therapist, like, you know what? She's right. A bitch. She's right. She's right. I messed up, right? I messed up. I should not have said that. And maybe I misread this. So now let me go back and have a conversation with my friend again. Yeah. Because actually it's not that deep.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so I feel like, but also knowing who you are, and it's okay to, because I feel like if you don't forgive somebody else, you're not forgiving yourself ultimately. And who wants to go through their life holding on to that type of hurt and that pain? It's not good for your physical health, emotional health, or mental health. And I know how I am when I begin to hold things in. I begin to spiral, and it's not good. And I think it shows in other ways. And sometimes people can have like, it can be like highly functional, like depressed. And I think people, so often those things can happen, right? If you're not forgiving your friends, you're holding that stuff in, you think like, oh, people are leaving me, right? They're abandoning me, they're rejecting me. Why they don't like me? Why they don't care about me? Why don't they call me? It's all that me. And it's like, but wait, take a step back. Like everyone has their own lives. People going through their own shit. Maybe you need to step up a little more. Maybe you need to call them. Maybe you need to reach, why aren't you doing that? I was actually having a moment like that. I was like, oh, I feel like my friends aren't calling me. It was like, wait, are you calling them? No. Yeah. I wasn't, because I feel like they always call me. And so just knowing like little small things like that. So also knowing yourself. And so I think I gave way more than 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but that's all good insight. I mean, it was just literally, it was just so much. And I think you can't sum it up sometimes of like how to forgive and stuff like that. I think it's a lot. I think one of the biggest things, and I think this is what young men need to understand, being young or just a teenager or whatever, our brains are not developed. We are very, focused, or what's the term, like hyper focused, or just like very tunnel vision. You have tunnel vision and you only care about what's like in your face and what's happening. And I feel like a lot of men, that are trying to forgive or trying to think about these things, that they only care about what's like how they feel right now, because they're going through so much. As a teenager, you go through so many emotions, puberty, breakups, or all the drama that, and having any drama like in your household doesn't like help with that. So you don't really, as young men, it's really tough for you to understand, like, have these conscious thoughts, Sometimes if you have luckily enough, if you have a good family, or, if you've seen the right podcast, or you just swipe the right thing and you see that, I feel like that's when it starts hitting you and it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And, that's always what we say is like the purpose of this, to hit those young men, the minds of the young men to, bring us all up together, like give the information that we didn't have as young kids and put it out there. So I'm so glad you said that, because, it wasn't just 2 points, but it was so much that they could maybe understand more than they'd be like, okay, these were 2 points. He said, I just have to forgive this and blah, blah, blah. No, it's more than that, right? It's actually, like you said, it has to be where you can't hold grudges, it has to be where you let it go for yourself. And there's so much more to it, and I think that's what they need to hear. And I think that we can inspire young kids like that, or young men or young women even. But I mean, it was beautifully said by you. And I really appreciate you being that vulnerable and saying that to us.
Thank you.
And
I have 2 more points that I want to
make. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Keep them coming.
As you were talking, Skylar, I thought about this. This is not a joke, but it's real. So when people ask, oh, how can you forgive so quickly? Because I'm able to sometimes have some issues with friends or with family members and also forgive them. And what taught me that was also watching reality TV.
TV?
Yeah, because why? On reality shows with ensemble cast, they have to, in real life, right, if we're having issues, you're being forced to like go to dinner with people. You're being forced to go to lunch with them, being forced to hang out with them.
Yeah.
This is also a job. And they have to really forgive really quickly and say I'm sorry and move on, so that the group can really keep moving forward. Because if not, it becomes kind of stale. In real life, we're like, I'm not going to hang out with Skylar and Daniel today. Like, Skylar just cussed me out yesterday. Like, I'm not doing it. But on TV, they have to go and do that. Yeah. They have to talk through it. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, they having like this. Sometimes it goes left, right? You see people like arguing and stuff. But I felt like when I watch reality TV sometimes, like there's something there, right? Because in real life, we like, well, I'm not doing this, not talking to you anymore. But they are forced to talk and have a conversation. And you see people move on and reconnect. and have like real deep, intimate conversations. I think it's so powerful. I know people give reality TV like a bad rep, but it's like, no, if you really look at it through a different lens, it also taught me how to have conversations with people that I probably would not have happened, because I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. You just cussed me out yesterday, right? You're having this issue, but like, no, talk to your friend and work through this. It also taught me that life is also very messy and very complicated, but it's still beautiful. If I had known that earlier, I probably would have a different relationship with certain people in my life. But now that I'm here, like, no, life is messy. It's very complicated, but also it's still beautiful. And so I always tell myself, like, always, ride the waves, but even ride it with peace. In the 12th grade, I saw the quote that said, in the eye of the storm, there's still peace. And I'm like, you think about a tornado when it's happening, right?
Yeah.
Everything around it is so chaotic, but in the middle is the eye, and it's just peaceful.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's life. And so for me, knowing that, I can forgive people because I know, like, hey, life is still beautiful. And when I hear stories about my grandma, things that she has done in her past, or my parents, or things I've seen, I'm like, no, these are wonderful people. But we all make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, right? So who am I to sit here and hold somebody hostage because something they've done to me? No, I have to learn how to forget and forgive and let it go and move forward in my life. Yeah. So I think what I will say is, life is messy, life is complicated, but life is still beautiful.
Yeah, and having those hard conversations, like you said, and one of the things that I realized in maybe new generation or whatever, but I think it just every generation is that a lot of people don't like conflict, and that's why they can't have conflict in relationship. They can't have conflicting, what do you call it, conversations.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the reason why is because they don't want to have that, they avoid conflict at all costs. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends, and I know a lot of people that do that, avoid it, and just pretend it's going to go away, which it doesn't. Nope. If you don't have those uncomfortable conversations, you can't grow, you can't move forward. So yeah,
you try, right? There you're like, oh, we had this issue last night because we were drunk, but you still remember what happened, what was said. And the next day it's kind of like, okay, who's going to break the ice? We're laughing about it. It's cool, but you probably should talk about it, right? This is not going to go away. And I think it's okay to have healthy confrontation. Yeah. It could be healthy. It doesn't have to be toxic and mean. You don't have to use profanity. You don't have to, go very deep and talk about people's physical appearances or talk about what they don't have. Like, no, we're talking about the issue at hand and what was said. It could be a healthy confrontation, and so we can move forward. Yeah, it can happen.
I feel like it also comes from like how you grew up, right? Like your parents, they would just fight and that's it. They wouldn't talk about it, right? Like at least my parents, they would just get an argument and that's it. They'll I don't know, probably go to different rooms and then that's it. And then the following day and so on, whatever. They never saw that communication, right? It was just like F you, whatever, and then we continue with our day. So it's very important that, like you said, right, to talk about it, talk it out.
That is so important. Even when I go home now, and I know my parents love each other, and I don't know what it feels like to be married to somebody for 30 years, 31 years. I don't know, can't even imagine it. Sorry, I just can't. But, sometimes they may argue about the most superfluous thing, right? This is so unnecessary. Why are we even arguing about the dishes, or I don't know, going to get to-go food? Like, who cares? Like, it's not that deep. And so when I was home a few months ago, they were arguing about something that was very simple to me. And so my family looked at me and they was like, why are you looking like that? And I was like, well, if this is what love looks like, I don't want it. No, I don't want it. Like, if it looks like this, if we're arguing about where we're going to get to-go food from, I don't know if I want it. But joking, but also not joking. It's kind of like, it's communication, right? It's healthy communication. Just talk, right? It doesn't have to be with a bunch of sarcasm. It doesn't have to be, because then it's going to lead to other things, right? Then it's going to be a back and forth thing. So when you say communication, I think it's so important. So when you talk about forgiveness, yes, I think it's very important with forgiveness, communication. Imagine if I had communicated to my dad years ago how I really felt. Just maybe I should have written him a letter. I didn't do any of that. Now I tell people, write letters and just tell them how you feel, because I know that really helps. So you're right, communication is so important. But we have to learn how to communicate. I think that's the thing. And so even now I'm learning how to communicate openly, honestly, but also truthfully too. I think it's so important.
Let me tell you, like my background's more of a fixed mindset. It's just, that's what we know. That's what I saw. And that's what I continue. You're in the circle. It's who you become, right? Whoever's around you, whatever you see. So it's really important. And I just, again, going back to communication, forgiveness, it's key to surround yourself. Okay, maybe this is another question. What made you like this? I know you say you had your stepdad, he was a good man and stuff, but outside of that, did you have any friends who would be the way you are now?
I know a lot of great people. I know hella great people. Like seriously, friends and family.
Yeah.
And when I took my friends home from LA with me to South Carolina 2 years ago, that's what they said. Like, oh, I see why you're the way you are. Your family. My family's so fun. Sometimes we have issues, right? And we might not communicate the way we should, but they're still good people. And then because of that, I know like, okay, Lamar, you have to communicate honestly how you feel, even outside of family stuff. So I know a lot of great people, family and friends. And most of my friends, even if I talk about men right now, they're very vulnerable. And that's very good. I think people see vulnerability as weakness, but that's a very a good superpower to have, right? When you're vulnerable, you can communicate openly and honestly with other men. Scholar call me, we'll communicate honestly, we'll show our vulnerabilities. We have a lot of mutual friends. We do the same thing. It's not, oh, you're weak because you think like this or you cried in front of us. Like, no. And I had to learn how to like actually show my emotions. And it's like, if you cry, it's okay to cry, right? Because I think so often we connote masculinity with like, oh, strength or, you know, hide your emotions. Well, that's what society has told us to do. But also that's very much unhealthy too. So when I have kids one day, if I have kids, like I want them to see like a healthy version of what it means to be a man. Yes, I saw my dad cry. Yes, I see my dad laugh. Like, yes, I see my dad being vulnerable. But yes, my dad is also very strong and loving too. And he shows that openly. He's not only showing me love when I'm home. It's like, but wherever we are, we're showing that love. And so I'm surrounded by a lot of beautiful and great and dope people. Also, I was raised in church. We had to go to church. My little joke is my parents did not go to church, but they would take us to church and drop us off and go back home. Or like we had to get on the van. We were in church. My sister and I were in church all the time. Vacation Bible study, youth choir, and the church people would take us to like colleges. So I always knew I was going to college. I believed in education. We were always reading, writing. So I was always surrounded by educated people, but also people who weren't like necessarily educated in the sense of going to school. They were still very smart people. And I recognized that and I knew that. But also I believed in me. I knew that I could do anything I want to put my fucking mind to, I can do it. Oh, yeah. So whatever it was, if I wanted to go to medical school, I knew I could go. I even remember in the 8th grade, I went to this medical camp because I wanted to see like, oh, this is something I want to do. But then we had to put like an IV, and I was like, oh, this shit's kind of. You passed out? I didn't pass. I was kind of like, oh, no, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, it's a little intense, and I just feel like, no, go back. You want to teach? Like, stay within education. And so, even think about like, oh, I want to go to law school. I had that like, I can be a lawyer. So I called my mom one day. It's like, hey, I want to take the LSAT, and she was like, I paid this money for the LSAT. You're not changing your mind. You're going to law school. And I was like, okay. I don't want to do that either. Damn, let me go back to education. It wasn't because I didn't think I couldn't do it. It's just kind of like your heart and your passion, you know, is for education right now. So just stay there. And then I never thought I'd be a professor, but here I am, right? And now I'm just like, oh, you really love to write. You're a writer, you're a storyteller. It's who you are. Now it's okay to do this career pivot and, you know, write for TV, go into film. So I'm surrounded by dope people who always push me, but also they also believe in me. Even right now, those people believe in me. And I really am thankful and grateful for that.
I want to ask you specifically, when growing up, 5 influential people that like made you who you are, like you really paid attention to, because I know that's a big number. It's usually like that's this so person.
Hard. That's not a big number. I think it's too small.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think it's big enough.
So the question is basically, what is the 5 influential people that you looked up to growing up, and then like, okay, like he has these qualities, or he's shown me this, or I'm in choir and they're taking me to school, and that's how it's everything that encapsulates how you like what made Lamar choose, you know, literature, choosing to be a writer, professor, all of that. Like, what was really pushing you besides you always wanting it? Like, did you have a lot of people around you? Like,
I did. So like, it was a small town, but I saw a lot of Black people doing great things. From a small town in Edgefield, rural people, they say, oh, you sound country, whatever. It's so small, like, you know, a few traffic lights. But we had people doing amazing things. So I saw people going to college. I saw people doing that. I saw people becoming educators and going to law school, becoming doctors. And so I would say, for me, one would be my 7th grade English language arts teacher, Miss Sharonda Rhines. She put the love of literacy and writing into me. She inspired me. And so that's when I really solidified, like, oh, I really do want to be a teacher, but particularly an English teacher, because I think literacy is so important. I think writing is so important. And some people say, would you change your major? Like, actually, no, because I know a lot of people who can't write. I love the fact that not to be fun, but I love the fact that I know how to actually write.
Yeah.
I know how to communicate in a particular way, and that's a skill that I feel like is so important to have, and I'm glad that I have that skill. And so I would say Mr. Ronda Rhymes. I would say my church family. I don't want to just say one person.
Yeah.
The church.
Well, yeah, do it as a group.
Church
Yeah,
family, because they
I like
all
that.
inspire me in many ways in terms of like taking me to universities, having me to take roles in church, like speaking in church. Being a leader in church. So I learned what it means to be a leader. So when I went to college, I knew what it meant to join an organization and to be, a president of an organization, or to be very active and know how to do it in a way. Did I know everything? Like, no, but I knew that I can learn how to do it just from like going back to my church experiences. Mm-hmm. So just my church family. I'll also say my actual family, once again, as a unit, mm-hmm. they all push me and inspire me in many ways, and very bright people. People always tell you that, oh, you have to go to college to be smart. I have some of my great aunts who are 70 years old, aunts, in their 40s and 50s. They did not go to college, but they're very smart people, very educated, mm-hmm. because they understand the world, understand society. And so I'll say my family, particularly both of my grandmothers, my mom's mom, but also my dad's mom. They always told me I could do anything, and they really do believe that I can do anything. If I told them I want to go to the moon, they would say, oh, I believe you can go to the moon. Yeah. So seriously, I believe I can do anything I put my mind to. And they always inspire me and push me in many ways. Like my dad's mom, my grandmother, she carries the book with her in her purse. And she's like, oh, this is my grandson. He's the first, he wrote this book. So
that's such a grandma thing to do.
But it's always inspiring me. Just so motivating. Yeah. And I would say another thing, this is going to sound weird, but maybe not weird. I would also like watching TV shows. Mm-hmm. So watching some of the shows from the 90s, those Black sitcoms like Moesha, Family Matters, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Sister, even like Martin, Jamie Foxx show. I saw other Black people doing great things. You see Moesha trying to in high school navigate being a young adult, but also going to college. Same with Tia and Tamera, high school, going to college. Yep. Like so, I saw that no, it's possible for me to do these things. I'm seeing it here in real life, but also on TV, I'm seeing that these things are also possible. And so I just knew that I could do it. Even when I think about fraternities and sororities, I didn't know much about it, but seeing things on TV is like, oh, this is real. You can actually join a fraternity. Mm-hmm. And so I would go and like look up fraternities like online to see like, oh, let me see what is this actually about. But also knowing men in my community who are also part of fraternities too. Mm-hmm. So I'll even say like, just other Black people, part of my community really inspired me in many ways. So I just can't pinpoint, 5 people. But I feel like I be doing other people a disservice because just so many people inspire me. Yeah. So I have to put them in like,
No, you should group them. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's kind of what I meant too. I mean, I know that you can group people together. I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on like how much support you have, and you showed what real love and support can do. You can achieve great things, I have
one more person. Sorry.
Yeah.
And which is interesting is my sister too. She grew up with me. My sister, because
your younger sister?
My younger sister. Yeah. She's like, I think she's 33. Yeah, only 3 years apart, 33. But even like thinking about growing up, I was always like, in my books and everything, would do my work, and we were the opposite, but she always supported me. Even now, she always supports me. And I'm like, you should go do this. You should do that. Have you thought about this? And she's doing things. Right? She's working on her master's in HR. But she's like, no, I think I'm going to just do it this way. I'm going to do it my way. She's like, you always trying to make people do what you want them to do. And which sometimes being like a bigger scale. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm so glad to have somebody like her to kind of bring me back down and say like, no, it's okay for me to maneuver this space the way I want to maneuver it. She's thankful to have me, and she'll support me, and she'll repost me on her stories and stuff, and, really show love. And I'm like, oh, I like that. But I'm like, oh, have you thought about doing this? She's like, no, I want to do it my way. And it's okay for me to do it my way. You don't have to always get people to do things the way you want them to do it. And I think that's something I had to learn, because so often I want people to do things the way I want them to do it. Because I think I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not always right. And so I'm just thankful for having somebody who's so practical to just bring me back down. To be like, no, it's okay for me to do things, maneuver it this way. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 things I'm going to say so that Daniel can probably speak on this as well. But one thing I'm going to say is that it's not that you don't know how to do things. We do. When we're giving advice, it's because we know a way. But there's other ways about it, right? Yeah. So, and we're always like, oh, well, you should do this way because it's the easiest. But it doesn't mean it is the easiest. It's just whatever their path is, right?
But I think if everybody listened to me, I think the world would be a much better place.
That's what I say. That's what I say.
The other thing I'm going to say, and I think it's because a lot of people lack is, and I think I mentioned it last time, Daniel, in our last podcast, is that, you know, some of us may have love, but not all of us have the support and the push and of a family. You're blessed. Sorry, you were so. You're welcome. You're just so blessed because you had this huge, not just your family, but your, like, you know, second family, you know, outer family, the choir. Like, you had so many different positive avenues about your life, and you know that's such a blessing because you know, as me growing up, I had love, but I had no one to push me to say to go to college. I had no one to push me. Daniel, same thing, right? We just didn't have that, and I felt like, man, like. I knew I had goals in my head, what I want to do, but no one really pushed me, said, I support you, I do this. None of that. I know that my mom always believed in me, but she still let me make my own decisions in my life. So good and bad. It's just one of those things that, you know, I just wish that I can do that maybe for my son, is give him the best resources possible, show him that I love him, and give him the support and say, you're amazing. I hear you're getting A's and B's. Kind of like, would you say last episode, Daniel, you got to break that cycle, or you got to the generational curse. You got to break that generation shit, because you know my mom was, like you said earlier, a teenage parent. I was a teenage parent. It's his time, you know, like I got to make sure I break that for myself so he can break that as well.
And you can, because my mom didn't take no shit. She was not letting me leave the house.
Yeah, he's not leaving.
There wasn't. No, I couldn't just. I had a curfew. Like, I just couldn't come and go.
Yeah,
she was very much, like I said, you know, did you do your work? Did you do your homework? They were at, you know, parent teacher conference. They weren't skipping stuff like that. They were very much present. My sister and I had to be part of extracurricular activities. We just couldn't come home every day. We had to have and do extracurricular activities and also have a job. So you're talking about like being in high school and you can't bring no C's in that house. And I'm thinking, like, I know for a fact y'all made C's and probably made D's too. But I was just like, hey, I can't make a C, because I make a C, they're gonna take my license. I want to drive. Like, I want to go out with my friends to the movies this weekend. So let me go study for this chemistry test. Well, also, hey, I got to work at Pizza Hut, you know, from 5 to 9. So here I am, you know, on my break, trying to write my AP Lit paper, while also thinking about, you know, what I'm doing this weekend. And then also I was on marching band, so I had to go to this competition this week. So it was just, I was very busy, but I'm also, like I said, blessed to have that, because some people.
I honestly wish I had that, Daniel. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you speak. I want you to speak on it too, Daniel, because I think this is so important for everyone to kind of understand, like, who each of us are, how we're came from 3 different places, and have, you know, 3 different takes on it. But you know, like, you were blessed to have those. I wasn't into this, and I had some people kind of push me, but not really. Like, maybe one teacher in here. Like, everyone always said I was smart, but I was too smart for my own fucking good. And that was true, you know.
I say the same thing about you all the time.
I'm just a smart ass, right? So I'm just, so I just feel like maybe if we had someone push us, you know, we could have like done great things, but that's not our life path. Like, our path is different and laid out differently for us. And you know, some of us know that we always want to be a writer. I didn't know what I want to do my entire life. I know I want to do some things, and if I get good at it, whatever. But if not, I just learned to pivot and keep moving. And I'm constantly changing. So I'm, you know, I don't really know what my life. I know what my life purpose is now, but I wish I knew a little bit sooner. And we always say that, just to know a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
And had someone to push me and something like that. So I wanted to, Daniel, I wanted to hear about maybe your take on that as well, about, you know, not being pushed and not having the opportunity that you could have had, knowing that you had the love and support, not just love, but actually support.
Yeah, no, like, even now, like, as we're getting to know ourselves, are we getting comfortable, you know, like, to be open, to be vulnerable with men. Like, now we're finding different versions of ourselves. So now that's what we're pivoting, right? Because since we were so close, so fixed-minded, now with the way we're thinking now, we're finding different shit. Like, oh, now I like to help the community. Back then it was just me, and fuck everyone else. You know what I mean? Well, that was that. But the whole pushing stuff, my mom always told me, like, oh, I got, like, I'm gonna support you whatever you do. I'm like, what if I want to be like a gangster? Are you gonna support me? Like, you know, like, I always wish I had like that push, like you said, you know, like, hey, get straight A's. Like, be like, because I was really good in soccer, but I never got the support. I highly believe, like, I could have been a professional soccer player, but I never had that guidance, that support from my parents, you know? Yeah. Because again, the coaches will be the one picking me up. I never bought cleats. They'll be like the coaches or friends, because I was so good that they wanted me to play with them. And it's like that. And just like, I have a little sister too, and I tell her, well, not two, but like, oh yeah, I'm talking about Brandon, but I'm like, that's your brother. That's your son, sorry. Well, I have a little sister, and I tell her, like, look, dude, I'm supposed to be better than my older sister, right? Because that I'm breaking her curse or generational curse. Now you have to be better than me, my older sister, and my parents. So whatever I'm doing, you got to do it better. And learn. And like I always say, you have to learn
on that. I like that.
Yeah, you always have to learn from everyone, even the what not to do's. You know, if you see me getting drunk, and then drunk out, you know, like fucking 1 a.m. drunk, throwing up, you know, the next day I'm gonna feel like shit, and you don't want that. So what are you gonna do? Not drink. You know what I mean? So it's just that. It's just again, I told my mom this once, and she started crying. She's like, "Well, I tried my best," but then afterwards I felt bad because, and it made me kind of feel like shit because at the end of the day, that's the only thing they knew, right? Like your dad's gonna teach you, like whatever he knows, whatever he was taught from his dad or grandpa, you know. And then it's up to me to change. It's up to us to change that, right? It's up to us to go outside the box and learn new things. For you to teach your son, for you to teach your sisters or your family, for me to teach my little sister, you know. And it's just. Yeah, I mean, from there.
I love that take. That's why I definitely wanted to hear it, man.
We talked a lot about family today, and I didn't expect that. But the older I get, the more I see how family is so important. And I'm so, like you said, blessed to have that. I was talking with a friend yesterday, and she always talks about death. And when she talks about it, I become a little, not scared, but kind of like, okay, why we got to keep talking about death? And she's like, well, clearly you're not okay with death and with dying. And I was like, she's like, why is that? And I was like, because I have so much life to live and so much more I want to do. And what she said was, if somebody came to me today and said, hey, you have the option of living or dying tomorrow, what are you going to do? She said, I'll just ask, give me one day to go talk to my grandma. Because my life has been so hard and she hasn't really had a family and she struggled so much growing up. And so she feels like she's just surviving right now. But I'm like, no, you're actually thriving. But because of, I think, the family component, she was okay. But like, you know what? I'm tired. Like, I'm okay with dying. I was like, I'm not, because I feel like I have my family. And I love my family so much. And I want to see my baby cousins who are, 5 months or, 1 year old or, 10 to grow up, to do great things. I want to see my cousins who are in my generation, my age generation, to also excel, have kids, be grandparents one day. I want to see my, parents just still excel, retire, live, and just love and enjoy life. So I'm like, no, I still have so much life left in me. I want to see my scripts on a TV show one day. I want to develop, TV shows. I want to have my own production company. There's so much more I want to do. So me being a professor, that's only like one part of my life. I'm already pivoting now. I'm going to resign in a few weeks and walk out on faith and do something totally different. So no, I don't want to die. I have so much life to live. And I think it comes to like my family, right? That support. And I'm so grateful because at first when you're a kid and, maybe even a young adult, like in college, you just want to have fun. I just want to have fun. I was like, I don't want to go home this weekend. I'm going to stay here. But no, now that I'm older, I moved away. And so now for holidays, I'm home. I'm going home throughout the summer because I know how important my family is. And it's so good to go home because they pour into you. They pour into me when I'm home. Like, oh, it feels good to be home for Christmas break because I had a hard, October, November. So now that I'm here, I can laugh with my family. Matter of fact, we had like a Christmas Eve. We have a game night, a family game night. And I was telling my friend, she's like, what are you doing tonight? I was like, oh, I'm hanging out with my family for a game night. And she said, why? But once again, it comes to what she didn't have growing up. So she doesn't understand the family component because she didn't have them. Like, no, this is beautiful to come home and just chill and relax with your family. No drama, just having a great time, drinking, partying, listening to music with your family. That's so refreshing to have. So you're right, I am blessed to have that. Yeah. So thank you for making me realize that.
I just bring it forefront, or is that forefront? Something like that?
Full circle to the forefront. You brought it to the
forefront. There we go. That was the word, guys. I just wanted to bring it because we know these things and we forget them. And it's always like, it's one of those things, like sometimes you reread books or that's why we journal and stuff like that. And if you ever read back and read some of your journals, you're like, what the heck? But then you realize maybe some of the things that you said was like, oh, wow, this was big. Like this was so, crucial of why now the way I think, because I wrote this one thing and now that's why I think differently. So now that you've made the choice to, your new direction, talk a little bit about your new direction. You've been a professor for I don't know how many years, maybe 7. I think
10
years. And yeah, tell us what you're doing now, what you're going to do now.
Okay, so let me rewind right quick.
Yeah.
So when Daniel asked about, the art of forgiveness, I want to say one more thing. I'm also a practical person too. And so, we can talk about the theory of forgiveness, like, letting go of your past with the hope or desire something can be different. So a few weeks ago, I had a hard time letting go and forgiving. And so what I did was I actually wrote in my journal, like Scholar just said. I went back, I reread the journal entry. It was raining out here. Because some people like write these letters and they burn them, meaning like you burn it away. It was raining. And so I went out and I put it on my balcony. And then the rain literally
washed it away.
Really?
Oh, that's pretty beautiful. Did you record it?
I did. And I should have.
That would
Should have. But it seems very like, whatever. And no, it actually helped. Because I was like, you can't hold on to that now. Water is also like renewal, right? Starting fresh, starting again. You have to let this wash it away. Literally wash it away. And so I did that spiritual cleansing of washing away in the forgiveness. Yeah. And I felt lighter. I feel lighter. And it's good because friends are like, you seem very light now. Like, I know I do feel light. And so I think those things are so important. So to fast forward, lately I have been in this space of, once again, career pivot in my 30s. And I think it's okay to do that. I know it's okay. And so I feel like I've been pushed and challenged by the universe and by God. And I have to accept that. Because so often I had to relearn what it means to have faith. And all last year, that was challenged. And I let God's hand go. And I'm not doing that this year in 2024 and moving forward at all. Like, I'm going to hold on tight to his unchanging hand and have unwavering faith, but also having unwavering integrity too about who I am and what I stand for. And so for the longest, like I told you, I think teach for me has been soul work, but there are many ways to teach. You don't have to teach within the 4 walls of a classroom. You can teach outside of that. And so I've done that, right? I'm 36 now. I've been teaching since I was 21 years old. I want something new. So now it's time for me to pivot. So now I would love to write for TV, create TV shows, create films, produce films, do all that stuff. And I say I don't want to act, but I want to do that. But also I want to create other jobs and avenues for other Black and brown people. I think that's so important. And so for me, taking my work around justice and, Blackness and storytelling and putting it on the screen. And so now I'm writing, I have 2 fictional shows that I'm writing scripts. And I think they're very funny. I'm very proud of them. And it's something we have not seen on TV. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. And it centers around, Black characters, particularly Black male characters, being vulnerable, showing what it's like to be in love, playing around with gender, sexuality, just showing stuff we haven't seen yet from a very positive lens. I think so often on TV shows you see things, but it's also from a negative stereotypical lens. That's not the route I'm going. I want to tell stories that we haven't seen before. I want to tell stories that, hey, Black people, we do exist in the future. We can create the future. And I'm really excited to do that. And so I have to walk out on faith. And so me resigning from my job as a professor, I never thought I would do that, but I can always go back to it. I have to resign so I can spend time on my writing. Yep. I would love to just spend time writing. And that's what I want to do. And so I'm being pushed because I don't know what it looks like. That's and usually my future's so planned. Since I was a kid, I would, do my own homework, to my parents about, this. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to become either a principal or a superintendent. Oh, I'm going to get my doctorate degree. Oh, I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to get tenure. Oh, what's next? A department chair, maybe even president, maybe a dean. Now it's wait, I don't even want to do those things. I really want to write. Follow your heart and write. When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought I couldn't do it because I didn't have any access to Hollywood. Now that I'm here, I know that anything is possible. I've been meeting people left and right, making connections, applying for writing fellowships. I know I have several entry points into this film industry and it's going to happen. And do I know how it's going to happen? No, but it's okay to be okay with the unknown. Yep. Because when you're not okay with the unknown, you're not fully being in the present. You have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. So I'm trying to be okay, I am okay with the unknown and the uncertainty. I'm just going to ride the wave. Like I said earlier, in the midst of the storm, but I'm going to ride it with peace because life is still beautiful. And I know that I have what it takes. And one day you will see my shows on a TV screen. One day you will see me developing things. I will be that person. I know I will. I don't know when and I don't know how, but I know it will happen.
Yeah. And you said something so So powerful. I mean, not even just powerful, but just the word alone is like people forget, you know, and I did too. When you said last year you lost faith, and that you refound faith, you're not doing that again for 2024, you know, that resonates with me so strong. And I don't know if I've told you, is that, you know, last year when I was going through all my stuff, you know, my panic attacks and everything, I found faith when I was working out again. Like I literally found faith, and I said it, and I told it to my girlfriend, I told everyone, like I literally found faith again. And it brought, like, it gets you that overwhelming of emotions. You're just like, why did I let go of this faith? And that's what we're looking for, you know, like that's what you, having faith is what's going to lead you there. I'm thankful that I found faith again, and I'm glad that you did as well, because that's what's going to push us forward, is having that faith of the unknowing. It's
been a pleasure talking to you, Lamar. I've learned so much, and there's still a lot of questions. We could probably keep talking if you're not got somewhere to be after this. But usually before we end, we like to ask our guests this final question. If you were to teach one thing to the world, what would it be and why?
You know, I am a teacher. Mm-hmm. When people say, what is your purpose in life? One of my purposes in life is actually to educate, to teach. And that's what I've always done. And will always do. And now what I do is I teach students, but also teachers too, and also family members or friends. I feel like to help deepen their level of consciousness from a critical level. And I think in order to do that, you have to look within and do that deep self-reflection and that deep soul work.